Picture a caveman crouched by a fire, holding a cup of something that smells faintly sour. He doesn't know it yet, but that cup is about to explain why humans build cities, form religions, and gather in groups at all. Because the real reason cavemen got drunk has almost nothing to do with fun, and almost everything to do with staying alive. Let's start with a question most people never think to ask. Why can humans even tolerate alcohol in the first place? Most animals can't. A small amount of ethanol will make a mouse stumble and collapse. But somewhere in our ancestry, something changed. Millions of years before the first human ever intentionally made a drink, our bodies developed the enzymes to break ethanol down efficiently. That's not a coincidence. That's a clue. The likely explanation lies on ancient forest floors. When fruit ripens past its peak, natural sugars ferment, producing faint traces of alcohol. For early primates scanning a jungle for food, that smell wasn't a warning, it was a signal. It meant this fruit was at its sweetest, most calorie-dense point. The individuals who followed that scent found food faster and survived better. Over millions of years, evolution quietly wired a taste for fermentation into our biology, long before anyone understood what fermentation even was. So by the time actual humans appeared, the craving already existed. The only thing missing was the recipe. That recipe shows up far earlier than most people expect, not in a city, not in a farm field, but in a cave. Long before agriculture existed, groups of hunter-gatherers were already fermenting grain deliberately, storing it, and using it for shared rituals. This wasn't a lucky accident. It required noticing a pattern, remembering it, and recreating it on purpose. That's not primitive behavior. That's early science. And this discovery breaks something we assumed for a long time. The old story says humans settled down, started farming, and only afterward figured out fermentation as a bonus. But the evidence suggests the opposite order. Some of the very first structures humans built together, massive, labor-intensive gathering sites, appear to have been built specifically around large-scale brewing, long before anyone planted a single crop. That raises an uncomfortable but fascinating possibility. What if farming wasn't invented for bread at all? Bread requires grinding, kneading, and careful baking. Beer requires almost none of that. Soak grain, let it sit, and nature does the rest. If early humans were choosing between the effort of farming for bread versus farming for a reliable supply of something that made gatherings feel meaningful, the easier, more rewarding choice might have been the one that got everyone talking, laughing, and trusting each other. In other words, the drive to drink together might be one of the forces that pushed nomadic humans to finally stay in one place. But survival wasn't just social. It was chemical. For most of human history, water was a gamble. Contaminated rivers and wells spread disease constantly, and people had no understanding of germs or sanitation. What they did understand, through repeated experience, was that fermented drinks rarely made them sick the way plain water sometimes did. The brewing process itself, without anyone knowing why, filtered out many of the dangers hiding in untreated water. So drinking wasn't rebellion. It was strategy. Entire communities built their daily routines around it, not to escape reality, but to avoid dying from the very water meant to sustain them. This is where alcohol stops being a beverage and starts becoming infrastructure. In some of the earliest organized societies, workers were paid directly in beer. Not coins. Not grain. Beer, measured out daily like a wage. It provided calories for grueling physical labor, it was safer than the water nearby, and it came with something coins never could, a shared moment at the end of an exhausting day. And then there's the part almost nobody expects. Alcohol became sacred. Across completely separate, unconnected cultures, fermentation was tied to religion, death, and ritual almost immediately. People associated the strange, altered feeling of intoxication with something otherworldly, a bridge between the ordinary and the divine. Entire deities were created just to represent it. Recipes for early alcoholic drinks were sometimes preserved not as instructions, but as prayers. Which means from the very beginning, the point was never getting drunk for its own sake. It was connection. It was safety. It was meaning. So here's the fuller picture. Millions of years before agriculture, evolution built bodies that craved fermentation as a survival tool. Long before farming existed, small groups were already brewing deliberately, possibly using that desire to justify staying in one place. And once settled, alcohol quietly became medicine, currency, safe hydration, and religion, all inside the same cup. The caveman crouched by that fire wasn't chasing a buzz. He was solving problems civilization hadn't even named yet: how to survive dangerous water, how to bond strangers into a group, how to make sense of a world without answers. Every time modern humans raise a glass together, we're repeating something that started long before cities, long before writing, long before we were even fully human. The ingredients changed. The reason never really did.